What's good, gamers? My name is Dr. Ryan Terrell, PsychSensei here, and today I thought I would switch it up a little bit from talking about emotional regulation to looking at maybe some of the physiological and cognitive changes that can happen post participating in esports. I myself is a neuroscience nerd, so always looking at brain structures and how brains are affected after esports is always something I'm interested in for sure. But before we dive into all of that, I really want to welcome everyone back to the show or the experience or whatever you want to call this. And as always, I'm just glad that we're hanging out here chilling together. If this is your first time, welcome, and if this is not your first time, welcome back. What I like to do is I like to read articles and practice Pomodoro technique. I also like to model how to read an article, so I'll be going over not only what the article says, but also how I'm reading it. So if you guys are learning how to read articles, hopefully this makes it a little more fun and enjoyable for you. And again, what the Pomodoro technique is basic. It's very, very simple. You just set a goal. My goal is to read as much as I can, and then after that, I'll set the timer for 20 minutes, and then I'll go, and once the timer is started, I will read until the timer goes up and give some hot takes on what I am reading about. Hopefully this time I'll actually remember to push the timer button. That's really my problem. I forget to push the button. And after the timer goes up, you'll hear a loud ding. And at the ding, that's when I like to get up and take a stretch break. Maybe I'll drink some of my tea and I'll just give some more opinions. After 5 minutes is up, I will get another Pomodoro in there and continue reading this article. So this article is entitled Physiological and Cognitive Functions Following a Discrete Session of Competitive Esports Gaming. This is a new recent article. It's published in May 2020. Here's your definition of esports. Okay, these are the types of games they used. First-person shooter and MOBAs. And what they found was increases in blood pressure. Increases in speed. Speed of what? They also found heart rate changes. First-person shooter elicited the biggest change, or a bigger change in MOBAs. Okay, and here's the implications. Love abstracts that are really concise and give you a nice little, this is what we found. Crazy, yeah? In 2 years, you're already offering scholarships for this. Amazing, it's awesome. Tournaments, training, coaching, scholarships. League of Legends, MOBA. True, teamwork and strategy. That's what MOBAs are about, baby. FPS, or first-person shooter. True, I'd say so. FPSs are faster paced than MOBAs. It'd be really interesting. Another interesting study to kind of look at here would be the differences in like cognitive pace, because I do agree that FPSs would be faster pace, and because like the game is shorter. A round of Valorant is shorter than a game of League of Legends or MOBA. If I was going to like compare it to like running, I'd say like FPSs in that case would be like short sprints. You get a break in between, you get to talk and come back, and then you sprint again for a couple of minutes. Versus like a MOBA, you're like locked into this game for like 30 to like 45 minutes a piece. And then if you think of like you're playing a best of 3, that's like, I don't know, like an hour, or like an hour and like 20 minutes or 80 minutes, right? So it's like the pace in which the game goes. I'm really interested to see what types of people would go towards the sprinting of the FPSs to the endurance running of the MOBAs. The point they're making is the types of stress in esports is different than the types of stress in traditional sports, where esports do not involve the level of physical exertion required for many of the other sports, but may elicit a physiological state of stress or tension that results in autonomic nervous system alteration. What this basically means is that instead of using physicality to induce this physiological state of stress or tension, it's more of the emotional cognitive piece that is eliciting this response. I think it's just the injuries aren't caused by like hitting or getting hit or like concussive injuries, but it's more like strain and use injuries, like a fine motor. I'll write it here. FPS equals sprint. MOBA equals endurance. Spelling, I think that spells endurance. Similarly, a study of FPS and MOBA game types found that gamers who played FPSs presented fast reaction time, sprint, this is sprint, but lower control over inhibition, endurance. That's how I kind of would translate and break those two things down. Okay, so this is the purpose right here. Okay, here's our hypothesis. Increased physiological changes associated with sympathetic nervous system responses. So these are like flight fight responses. They're looking at executive function, changes in prolonged gameplay. So they went out and watched people? Nice. So they use cognitive and physiological measures before and after, so pre and post tests, using 2 different games. Wow, that's pretty cool. Okay, so they actually looked at before and after they participated in a tournament. Nice. Dude, I wonder how that kind of skewed their tournament results though, man. Like, you have to go get tested and go play and get tested after. Like, that's one more thing that you have to think about cognitively. Oh my god, I have to do the study and I have to perform. Yikes. They were 18 to 30 years old. Via Discord. Wow, look at that. Ooh, women and men. That's good. Shout out to NYIT eSport team. This is what they collected. So they looked at pre and post of the gaming session. They looked at blood pressure, heart rate, respiratory rate, visual acuity, psychomotor speed, online executive functioning. Dude, can you imagine how I have to get ready for this competition and you're gonna put me through all these like executive functioning tests and such? Hexio skin shirt. Oh, cool. So heart rate was measured through a shirt? Sign me up. Where can I get one of those? 2.5 hours. That's how long they played for. And then they did it again. Oh my gosh. Dude, this Hexo skin looks dope though. I wonder how much this shirt is. Yeah, I wish they told you like, oh, and this is like $1,999. Get yours now. That's so cool though. Like this shirt is a garment with electrodes that can measure and calculate a number of physiological variables, including heart rate changes, respiratory rate, steps taken, and sleep. Dude, basically this is like your Apple Watch without... you know what? I bet you it even tells the time. Honestly, I bet you push a button and like it tells you the time or like buzzes. How I'm making this up, but that'd be so cool, dude. How do you need to wash this though? I mean, it's hand wash only, I'm sure. Delicate cycle. Oh, maybe not. Maybe I don't want to wear these shirts. I thought it was just gonna be like a shirt that just doesn't just do anything, but apparently you have to like lube up the inside with conductive gel and then like put it on you so it gets good conduction. I mean, makes sense. I'm just thinking how cool it would have been if it, you know, it were in the future. Alas, we're still in 2020. Okay, this is important to note. There was only 17 subjects, and why this is important to know is that it's a very small sample size. 17 is really small. So let's just take that in consideration. That was the ding, my friends. So I will go on a stretch. It's not that I don't think that these tests are good or like that these tests are inappropriately used. But what I'm saying is that like the cognitive tests you're doing cognitive measures, so you want to see the cognitive pre and post. I can see that. At the same time, I'm trying to ask myself like what better test could they have used? But if you're measuring like standard things, and I know the battery that they're taking these individual tests from, and I think the good thing about that battery is that those tests can stand alone. You know what I mean? Like they can stand alone. You don't need to take like 3 different tests to do one area of cognitive functioning. Instead, like you can use one of these tests and be like, okay, this is I can draw conclusions from this because it was standardized. You only using one test. So it makes sense. So I think what's different from this type of article than the other type of articles that I've been reading is that like instead of describing the experience of esports, these articles are more scientific based and they're trying to draw conclusions from psychological tests and measures, which is cool. I think it's important to see both. I mean, for me, when I read these articles, what I try to do is try to see like how I could apply this information just instead of like, oh, this was a cool study and this is a fact, but instead of like, okay, what conclusions is this study drawing? How can I use the context of how this study is going and then apply it to current esport players or gamers in general? My hypothesis is visual acuity went down after gaming sessions because you're staring at something very closely for a long period of time and your eyes adjust to that thing that's so close. Perhaps a suggestion would be not only take breaks for your body and stretch like I'm doing, modeling, but also like make sure you look up from the screen so your eyes can also take a break, or maybe even just like close your eyes. I think it's really just taking breaks. And I mean, I also would suggest if you're trying to go to sleep, don't game 30 minutes before you try to go to sleep, or I would even say like an hour. All right, so say blue light is bad and like artificial light keeps you awake. But also, I'm gonna guess that this thing is gonna confirm the statement of like when you do play video games, it's exciting. Your heart rate gets pumping. You know, you're not moving your body, but you know, your sympathetic nervous system is going, right? Your blood is pumping, your heart rate is up, blood pressure is probably up, and those things are not conducive to sleeping. It's kind of the same thing of like don't exercise like an hour before you go to sleep. It's harder for you to go to sleep because everything is moving. And I think this article is going to go this way, there's going to be physiological changes of excitement, which is not conducive. Excitement is not conducive to resting. Instead of participating in games and getting excited before bed, it's probably better to like set a good boundary of I'm going to go sleep here so you can have a nice little bedtime routine so you can fall asleep instead of lying in bed and trying to rest and fall asleep. You know the hardest thing about trying to fall asleep is the more that you try to think about trying to fall asleep, the harder it is to sleep. It's the weirdest paradox. Really, it's tragic. Okay, so here's the results. Yay. It's like I knew. Systolic blood pressure significantly increased after gameplay session. FPSs went up, but systolic blood pressure decreased, but not significantly for MOBA games. Interesting. Maybe blood pressure went down because they're like, oh my god, thank god it's over. It's been 45 minutes. Oh. Okay, so respiration went up. However, not significantly different after gameplay, either for game type. However, the change from resting heart rate to peak heart rate during gameplay was significantly different for types. For first-person shooters, heart rating significantly more than MOBAs. My other hypothesis of why this is true, and for you scholars out there, if you want to write this dissertation, I really wonder like intimacy of the game, like shooting someone one is a very like in your face kind of action versus like getting ganked by a jungler. You know, maybe it feels more personal to get shot in the face or getting shot even in like Valorant versus like taking an Ash arrow to the dome. It's cool that they looked at Overwatch. I think that's pretty cool. I think another interesting study would be even to look at like Overwatch to COD and seeing the differences in between those first person shooters. Okay, psychomotor speed. Okay, executive functions. Okay, so this remained the same. Mental flexibility. Yeah. Accuracy was not significantly changed. Speed was significantly increased. Action time decreased and subjects were faster after gameplay. And all of these tests of cognitive function, the speed in which they complete the tests increased, but the accuracy went down. This was mental flexibility. So I think this goes down to cognitive fatigue because speed doesn't really take that much thinking where accuracy does. So if you're doing something really, really quickly, but you're not doing it efficiently, I think that means that you're getting tired. If you think about things that you don't really need to think about, you can do them very quickly. Like, ever seen like an assembly line worker when he's just like, I don't know, the things are coming down the line and he's just like not even looking, he's just doing this and they're all like getting flipped into the box? Or like the people like take a card and box and like put the cards in, like they can do this really quickly, but the level of cognitive function to do those tasks is very low. If you need something that requires both speed and accuracy, you need to be heavily engaged in your cognitions to execute that behavior. What this tells me is that like esports is a cognitively heavy and taxing activity. What this doesn't measure too is how much energy the players' emotional states and emotional regulation took out on their mental fortitude. So I think this is really good. I really like this because this shows how mentally taxing esports is. What I also like to point out is that it's sneakily mentally taxing because you think you're doing well because you're still functioning quickly, but the quality of your mental functioning, I'm taking this from the accuracy, goes down, decreases. So you think you're fine, but you're not really fine. You have the illusion of I'm good and like I can still think very quickly, so I'm just gonna play this next game, but you're not thinking at a high level. Wow, they actually did a lot of tests. Yeah, this actually takes a long time. I kind of feel bad for the gamers in this because I can only imagine what it was like to do a full-on tournament and then do a full-on cognitive test, man. Okay, discussion. What you got for me? What you got for me? I think it's really interesting that they looked at FPSs and MOBAs and compared them. That's pretty cool. I think this is cool, and I do think it's more akin to sprinting. Apparently, if you want to get more riled up, play some FPSs. Shout out to Overwatch. Okay, interesting. Some researchers found more aggressive or violent video games to elicit cardiovascular stress response and a systolic BP increase. I would say Overwatch is much more fast-paced than League of Legends. Aerobic response. I mean, that makes sense. So you can still elicit aerobic response, and I'm guessing that's like the respiratory and the heart and the body's functioning while stationary. You elicit these same type of responses as you would after you like take a lap around the track. Makes sense. Let me just read this. So it says, our physiological findings may lead one to argue that esports can elicit an aerobic response, but this would in all likelihood be an error, akin to comparing an anxiety attack to health promoting exercise. By saying this sentence, what they're trying to do is they're trying to cover their butt saying like, for the people that would say like, I'm changing my blood pressure, so see I'm getting like my steps in or my aerobic exercise in, and they're trying to say like, no, it's not the same. And I agree, it's not the same, even though the response kind of feels that way. Oh, interesting. Okay. The main difference is that esports are likely eliciting physiological changes due to, oh my gosh, catecholamines. Oh my gosh, catecholamines. Catecholamines? That's what it is now. Catecholamines, or why'd you just say this? Stress hormones. Making me look stupid that I can't read your work. So basically, they are eliciting physiological changes due to stress hormones produced in the adrenal glands. Makes sense. Like you're getting the adrenaline hit, and but it's not really produced in the same way that you would do like health promoting exercises. One's a response from hormones, and the other response is actual like physical exertion. Fair. Ooh, interesting. Cognitive areas of top-down attention and spatial processing were improved. Interesting. That's in fighting games or shooting games. We examined short-term executive function effects. True. I think this is important to state that these are just the short-term effects of esports, and this is not like once you do esports, you forever cognitive speed increase, cognitive acuity decrease. It's definitely not. That's why I hypothesize that this comes back down to cognitive fatigue. Because I'm sure after this, you give them some time to like rest and recover, and they're gonna go back down to baseline because they just basically participated in a 2.5 plus maybe an hour or 45 minutes of cognitive strain. So it makes sense of why you would be a little bit slower or drained after these things. But again, these are not permanent. With some rest and recovery, I'm sure their cognitive function would go back to baseline. Unless, I mean, you keep playing in video games. I think it just continued to plummet. Okay, what are your number of interesting findings? I like it. They found 3 measures that did this. Why impulsivity? Because this is a decrease in control. And why is it a decrease in control? Because tired. Problem solving, so they can still problem solve. That's pretty cool. One could hypothesize that while gaming increases the need for problem solving and speed, there is little real repercussion for impulsivity, and therefore behavior follows suit. No, there is huge repercussions for impulsivity in esports if you're playing at a high level. Frontal lobes, baby. Esports is all about frontal lobes and control of frontal lobes. And if you can control this and guide this and be intentional with this, baby, the world's your oyster. But if you cannot, then you're gonna go down to impulsivity, and impulsivity in games equals bad. Self-regulation is key, boys and girls, in life and in esports. Need for breaks in gaming. That might be a type of cognitive fatigue. Yes. Aha, see? Limitation, small sample size. But who wants to do this? I really want to know the gig that they got to test these players for sure. You know, I like this article. This is a really interesting article, in my opinion. Well, first of all, shout out to those 17 people who allowed themselves to be subjected to this much testing in one day. I can only imagine how tired they were. What I like about this article is that it showed how you can get cognitively fatigued, but yet still think you're fine because you think you're functioning at a high level. I mean, the speed is still there, but the accuracy is gone. But because you're going so fast, or you think that the speed is normal. However, I do like the conclusion that this article drew that cognitive ability goes down with cognitive fatigue. So it's important that players take breaks, because if we don't take breaks, we may think we're fine, but our performance may continue to dip and fall. I think it's really, really important to make sure you take breaks or set limits for yourself. I also do like that this article validated that there is a physiological component to gaming. And then when you do play, there are changes in heart rates. I mean, I've experienced them. I'm sure all of you out there have experienced them too. Your heart pumps a little faster, maybe you breathe a little harder. I do like the distinction though that they're saying that this response is probably from adrenaline dumps and it's not as healthy, and it would be a false statement to say, oh, I'm being healthy or I'm getting my workout in. What I'm trying to say is that there is a change in blood pressure, respiratory, heart rate, all those kinds of things, but it's not the same as getting out there and actually like moving your body, going for a walk. So don't get it twisted. Because you're playing games doesn't mean you're getting your workout in. I mean, maybe it's part and parcel. You get tired, and after you play a couple games, maybe the best way to take a break is maybe an active break, and you go out for a walk. So while you're going out for a walk, you're resting your eyes, you're looking farther in a distance, not just a screen. You are moving your body, so you're engaging physiological changes for health. Take a break from the game and give your brain a rest too. So I think it's all great. I definitely would show this to players if they're like, oh, like these things happen. Like, this is validation that these things happen, and this is why it's more important for you to take a break. So let's all go for a walk together. I think that's it. My positive message for the night is take a break. Make sure that you give yourself a rest after, some hard work. When you put your effort into a lot of things, it's always good to take a break. And just because you're taking a break doesn't mean that you're being a slacker. It doesn't mean that you're not trying hard. It doesn't mean that you're weak. Taking breaks are an integral part of performing at a high level. Show yourself some love. Go take a break. Doctor's orders. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. And as always, my name is Dr. Ryan Sproul, your PsychSensei, teaching you how to think, play, and slay. One article, one day, I guess one break at a time. All right, friends. You guys take it easy. Same time, same place, I guess. All right. Peace.